So, I never thought I'd be the one posting here, but life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. I'm a 35-year-old guy named Jason, married to Emily for 6 years. We met in college, classic love story, right? We clicked instantly, shared the same sense of humor, and had big dreams for the future. Fast forward to today, and things have taken a turn I never saw coming. In the beginning, our relationship was solid. We moved in together shortly after graduation, bought a cozy house in the suburbs, and even started a little side business selling handmade furniture. Life was good. But about a year ago, I started noticing little things that didn't add up. Emily became more distant, often snapping at me over the smallest things. She started staying late at work more frequently, and when she wasn't, she was glued to her phone, texting or on social media. At first, I brushed it off as stress from our growing business or just the normal strains of daily life. But then came the nights she'd come home late without a clear explanation, and the times she'd be too tired to hang out or even have a conversation. I tried to talk to her about it, but she'd shut me down, accusing me of being paranoid and controlling. It hurt, but I wanted to believe it was just a rough patch we could get through together. The real first sign that something was seriously wrong came when I noticed a sudden spike in our phone bills. There were a bunch of unknown numbers and texts at odd hours. I confronted her about it, and instead of addressing it, Emily became even more bitchy, telling me I was invading her privacy and accusing me of mistrusting her without reason. That's when I started to feel like maybe there was more to her late nights and secretive behavior. I'm still processing everything, but I know I need to dig deeper to understand what's really going on. Little did I know, the truth was going to be way more shocking than I could have ever imagined. A couple of weeks after noticing those mysterious texts and the spike in our phone bill, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I'm not usually the snooping type, but the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong just wouldn't let me rest. One evening, I told myself I'd check our phone records more thoroughly, thinking maybe it was just some harmless friends or family members she was texting. As I scrolled through the messages, one name kept popping up repeatedly, Mike. It wasn't just occasional texts either, there were long conversations happening late at night. My heart started pounding as I pieced things together. Mike wasn't someone Emily had ever mentioned before. I did a quick search and found out he was a guy from her yoga class, a detail she conveniently forgot to share. Feeling a mix of anger and betrayal, I decided to dig deeper. I enlisted the help of my friend, Ryan, who's pretty tech-savvy. Together, we went through Emily's social media accounts and found more red flags, photos of her and Mike looking overly affectionate, comments that hinted at a deeper connection, and even a few suggestive posts about their private time together. But the real bombshell came when Ryan managed to access a hidden folder on Emily's laptop. There, amidst a bunch of seemingly innocent files, were explicit photos and a chat log detailing intimate conversations with Mike. It was undeniable, Emily was having a physical relationship with someone else. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, feeling like my world was collapsing. How could she do this to me after everything we'd been through? The trust, the plans for the future, it all felt like a lie. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself before confronting her. When I finally decided to bring it up, I knew it was going to be a pivotal moment in our marriage. I approached Emily one evening, trying to keep my voice calm despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, trying to sound as composed as possible. She looked up from her phone, her expression guarded. "About what, Jason?" I took a deep breath, holding up my phone to show her the evidence. "I know about you and Mike. The texts, the photos, it's all here." For a moment, she just stared at the screen, then back at me with a mix of anger and panic. "Are you serious? You think you can just go through my stuff like that?" I nodded, feeling the weight of her defensiveness. "Yes, Emily. I think it's time we had an honest conversation." Her reaction was exactly what I feared, she started denying everything, then shifted into making accusations against me, calling me paranoid and controlling. It was infuriating to hear her lie and twist the situation, but deep down, I knew the truth was staring right back at me. I left the confrontation feeling more confused and hurt than ever. How do you even begin to process something like this when the person you love is denying it right in front of you? I'm still trying to make sense of it all, and honestly, I have no idea what's next. But I guess this is just the beginning of a long and painful journey. After that intense confrontation where Emily outright denied everything and threw accusations my way, I was left feeling more confused and hurt than ever. But I wasn't ready to let it go just yet. I needed answers, and I needed them now. The next day, I decided to keep a closer eye on Emily. I wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. So, I started following her discreetly after work. It wasn't easy juggling my own job and trying to be a detective, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you would. One Friday evening, I saw Emily meet up with Mike at a local bar. My heart sank as I watched them laugh and act like an old couple. They left the bar together, and I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with undeniable proof. When I got home, I decided to address it head-on. I laid out all the evidence, texts, photos, everything Ryan helped me find. I could see the panic in her eyes this time. She tried to downplay it, saying it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything. But I wasn't buying it. That's when things took an unexpected turn. As we were arguing, our son, Tyler, came home from soccer practice early because he wasn't feeling well. Seeing the tension between us, he asked what was going on. I was torn. How could I explain this mess to him without shattering his view of our family? Emily, surprisingly, took charge. She told Tyler that Dad had been really stressed with work and that sometimes parents argue but still love each other. It felt like a stab in the heart, hearing her spin this story in front of our kid. But the drama wasn't over. Later that night, I received a call from Ryan, my tech-savvy friend. He had dug even deeper and found something that completely blew the situation wide open. It turns out Mike isn't just some random guy from yoga class, he's actually Emily's coworker, someone she's worked closely with for the past few months. And get this, Ryan found a series of emails where they discussed not just work stuff but also made plans for weekend trips and shared intimate jokes. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more tangled, I discovered that Emily had also been hiding our bank statements and had made several large withdrawals over the past few months. It seemed like she was setting up something big, but I couldn't figure out what. Feeling overwhelmed, I decided to take a step back and process everything. I needed to talk to someone impartial, so I reached out to my brother, Mark, for advice. Mark has always been the level-headed one in our family, and I hoped he could provide some clarity. When I told him everything, he suggested that maybe Emily was going through something I wasn't aware of, like she felt neglected or unhappy in our marriage. It made me wonder if there were signs I had missed, but deep down, I knew something was seriously wrong. As I hung up the phone with Mark, I realized that my life was unraveling faster than I could handle. Between the mounting evidence of Emily's infidelity, the lies, and now the financial secrets, I was drowning in a sea of betrayal and confusion. After hanging up with my brother Mark, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. At least someone was listening, but his suggestion that Emily might be unhappy in our marriage didn't sit right with me. I mean, of course, I wanted things to work out, but all the evidence pointed to something much darker. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained. I decided to take a walk to clear my head, hoping that some fresh air might help me process everything. As I strolled through our neighborhood, I noticed our neighbor, Karen, struggling with her laundry on her balcony. We've always been friendly, so I offered to help. Little did I know, this small gesture would lead to another bombshell. While chatting with Karen, she mentioned seeing Emily and Mike together more often than just at work. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she was just being nosy. But Karen had something else. she showed me a photo she'd taken from her window the night before. There they were, Emily and Mike, leaving a hotel together after what looked like a weekend getaway. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just office flirting anymore, it was something much more serious. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I decided to confront Mike directly. I figured if Emily was lying, maybe Mike would be upfront about his involvement. I found out that Mike was attending a conference in another city and decided to drop by his hotel. When I walked into the lobby, Mike was surprisingly calm. "Mike, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked up, a mix of surprise and irritation on his face. "Jason, what's this about?" Without wasting any time, I showed him the photo Karen took. His facade cracked for a moment before he regained his composure. "Look, Jason, it's not what you think," he started, but I wasn't buying it. "Emily and we've been spending time together, but it's just friendship." Friendship? After everything I knew? It didn't add up. Mike's dismissive attitude only fueled my suspicion. Before I could press further, he abruptly left, leaving me more confused and angry than ever. Back home, I decided to dig into the financial aspect Emily had been hiding. I went through our bank statements and discovered several large withdrawals made to an account I didn't recognize. The transactions were dated around the same time Emily and Mike had been seen together at the hotel. It was clear she was hiding something significant, possibly funding her affair or something even more sinister. Feeling overwhelmed, I reached out to Ryan again, hoping he could help trace the mysterious account. After some digging, Ryan uncovered that the account was tied to a real estate investment company Emily had recently invested in without my knowledge. To add to the confusion, I found out that Emily had been siphoning money to this account for months, steadily draining our savings. Just when I thought I couldn't handle any more, our son Tyler came home from school with a lump in his throat. He confided in me that he'd overheard Emily arguing on the phone the night before, threatening to leave if things didn't change. Hearing my kid talk about our problems was like a dagger to the heart. Not only was my marriage falling apart, but it was also affecting our family. Desperate for answers, I decided to set up a little surveillance. I installed a few cameras around the house, hoping to catch Emily in the act or at least find more concrete evidence. What I discovered was both shocking and heartbreaking. Emily had been visiting a therapist for months, discussing issues in our marriage that I had been oblivious to. She was trying to find a way to cope with her dissatisfaction, but instead of communicating, she turned to Mike for support. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, but the picture they painted was anything but clear. Emily's lies weren't just about the affair, they were about everything. Trust was shattered, and I was left picking up the pieces of our broken relationship. As I sit here, typing all of this out, I realize how much my life has changed in such a short time. The unexpected twists and turns have left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and what it means to truly know someone. After discovering Emily's secret meetings with Mike, the hidden bank account, and her therapy sessions, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of deceit. I knew I needed to confront her again, but this time, I wanted to approach it differently. Maybe there was more to the story, and I needed to understand her perspective, if there was one at all. One evening, I decided to sit down with Emily and have a heart-to-heart conversation. I wanted to hear her side without immediately jumping to conclusions. I hoped this would be the moment we could salvage our marriage. "Emily, we need to talk," I began gently, trying to keep my tone as non-confrontational as possible. She looked up from her phone, her expression unreadable. "About what, Jason?" I took a deep breath. "I know you've been going through a lot lately. I see that you've been visiting a therapist. I want to understand what's been bothering you." For a moment, she seemed taken aback by my approach. Then, her demeanor shifted. "You think I have nothing to say, don't you? Everything's fine, Jason. You're just overreacting." That's when I decided to lay it all out. I showed her the photos Karen took, the messages with Mike, and the financial discrepancies. I watched as her face turned pale, and her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Emily snapped, her voice rising. "You're just trying to control me." Before I could respond, she grabbed her bag and stormed out of the house, leaving me standing there in shock. I didn't know what to do next, so I decided to follow her, hoping to get some answers. I trailed her to a coffee shop a few blocks away. I watched as she sat down with Mike, who greeted her warmly. They chatted for a while, their body language suggesting more than just friendship. My heart sank as I realized how deep this was. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and helplessness. I knew I couldn't let this go on, but I also didn't know how to fix what was broken. The next day, I decided to talk to Tyler again, hoping our son might offer some insight. When I asked him about what he overheard, his eyes welled up with tears. "Dad, I don't know what's happening, but Mom seems really sad. I don't like it when you guys fight." Hearing that from Tyler hit me hard. I didn't want our son to be caught in the middle of our problems, but I also couldn't ignore the reality of Emily's actions. I realized that this wasn't just about infidelity anymore, it was about the future of our entire family. In an unexpected twist, I received a text from an unknown number that simply said, "We need to talk." The message was cryptic, but something told me it was important. I debated whether to ignore it or respond, but curiosity got the better of me. I replied, asking who it was and what they wanted. To my surprise, the response came quickly, "Meet me at the park tomorrow at 3 p.m. I have information about Emily." I was skeptical but intrigued. Who could this be? Another friend? A coworker? I decided to go, hoping this might provide some clarity or perhaps lead to the truth behind Emily's lies. The next day, I arrived at the park early, scanning the area for any sign of the mysterious person. As 3 p.m. approached, I spotted a woman in her late 20s sitting on a bench, looking nervous. She noticed me and gestured for me to come over. "Hi, are you Jason?" she asked hesitantly. "Yes, that's me," I replied. "You mentioned you have information about Emily?" She nodded, pulling out her phone. "My name is Sarah. I used to work with Emily at the real estate company. I think you need to know some things." I listened intently as Sarah explained that Emily had been involved in some shady business dealings. She revealed that the real estate investments were part of a larger scheme that involved embezzling funds and that Mike was more than just a coworker, he was her partner in crime. My mind was racing. Not only was Emily cheating on me, but she was also involved in fraudulent activities that could ruin our lives financially and legally. This was beyond anything I had imagined. As Sarah finished her story, I felt a mix of emotions, anger at Emily, fear for our future, and a deep sense of betrayal. I thanked her for coming forward and left the park with a heavy heart, knowing that the situation was far more complicated than I had initially thought. Now, I have to decide my next move. Do I confront Emily with this new information? Do I involve the authorities? I'm stuck between wanting to protect my family and feeling like everything is falling apart. After meeting Sarah at the park and learning about Emily's involvement in shady business dealings with Mike, I was left reeling. Not only was my marriage falling apart due to infidelity, but now there were serious financial and legal implications looming over us. I had to decide quickly on my next move. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with thoughts of betrayal, fear for our future, and worry about our son, Tyler. I knew I couldn't handle this alone, so I decided to reach out to another friend, Lisa, who works in law enforcement. I needed someone who could give me unbiased advice on how to navigate this mess. When I met Lisa for coffee the next morning, I laid everything out: Emily's affair, the financial discrepancies, and Sarah's revelation about the embezzlement. Lisa listened patiently, her expression turning serious as I spoke. "Jason, this is serious. You need to gather all your evidence and consider contacting a lawyer. If Emily is involved in criminal activities, this could have legal ramifications for both of you. Her words hit hard. The reality that Emily's actions could ruin our lives legally was terrifying. I thanked Lisa for her advice and left the cafe with a heavy heart, knowing that the situation was escalating beyond personal betrayal. Determined to protect my family, I decided to confront Emily one more time, this time armed with all the information I had gathered. I approached her in the evening, hoping we could finally have an honest conversation. "Emily, we need to talk again," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She looked up from her phone, her eyes guarded. "What is it this time, Jason?" I took a deep breath and began laying out everything: Sarah's account, the real estate embezzlement, and Mike's true role. I could see the panic starting to set in her eyes. "Emily, this isn't just about the affair anymore. You're involved in something much bigger, and it's jeopardizing our entire lives." Her facade started to crumble. For the first time, she seemed genuinely distressed. "Jason, I can explain," she began, her voice shaky. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. Mike and we got involved in the business, and things just spiraled out of control." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. It was our neighbor, Karen, who had become a key witness in uncovering Emily's actions. She had come to talk, saying she saw more than just the hotel meetups. "I need to tell you something," Karen said, her voice trembling. "I saw Emily and Mike meeting with some shady characters downtown. I think they're planning something big." This was the tipping point. I realized that Emily wasn't just cheating or embezzling funds, she was deeply entangled in a criminal network. I felt a mix of fear, anger, and sadness. How could the woman I loved be involved in something so dangerous? As if things couldn't get any more chaotic, Tyler came home early from school again, looking upset. "Dad, can we talk?" he asked quietly. I knelt down to his level, trying to hide my own distress. "What's wrong, buddy?" He hesitated before speaking. "I found some of Mom's papers in her office. They look really important, and she was arguing on the phone about them. I'm scared, Dad." Hearing Tyler's fears added another layer of urgency to the situation. I had to act fast to protect my son and figure out what Emily was truly up to. I decided it was time to involve the authorities, but I wasn't sure how Emily would react or if she would retaliate. That evening, I called Lisa to discuss the next steps. She advised me to document everything meticulously and prepare for the possibility of a legal battle. "This is going to get complicated, Jason. Make sure you have all your evidence and consider getting a restraining order if things escalate." Feeling overwhelmed but resolute, I started gathering all the evidence Sarah and Ryan had helped me uncover. Emails, photos, financial statements, it was all coming together, painting a picture of a woman I thought I knew but clearly didn't. Just when I thought I had a handle on things, another unexpected event occurred. Mike reached out to me directly, asking to meet and clear the air. Suspicious but curious, I agreed to meet him at a quiet diner the next day. Meeting Mike was tense. He tried to downplay his involvement, claiming that things had gone wrong and that he was trying to back out of the scheme. "Jason, you don't understand. Emily and things got out of hand. We never meant for any of this to happen," he pleaded. But his story didn't add up. The more he spoke, the more I realized he was trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage. I left the diner feeling more convinced than ever that Emily and Mike were deeply involved in something illicit and that there was no going back. As I sat alone that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt an overwhelming sense of loss. Not just of my marriage, but of the trust and security I once felt. The unexpected twists had turned my life upside down, and I was left grappling with questions about what the future held for me and my family. I knew I couldn't turn back now. The next steps would determine everything. Should I push for a divorce immediately? How would this affect Tyler? And most importantly, how could I protect myself from the legal fallout? After my tense meeting with Mike at the diner, I felt more determined than ever to get to the bottom of this mess. His attempts to downplay his involvement only confirmed my suspicions that Emily and Mike were deep into something shady. But how far? And more importantly, how could I protect my family from the fallout? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with thoughts of betrayal, legal troubles, and the safety of our son, Tyler. I knew I needed professional help, so I decided to take Lisa's advice seriously and reached out to her for a formal consultation. She agreed to meet the next morning to discuss the evidence I had gathered and the best way to proceed legally. The following day, I met Lisa at her office. She was straightforward and no nonsense, which was exactly what I needed. We went through all the evidence, emails, photos, financial statements, and the information Sarah had provided about the embezzlement scheme. Lisa listened intently, nodding occasionally, and then laid out the options. Jason, based on what you've shown me, it's crucial to document everything meticulously. We need to build a strong case if you decide to press charges or go through a divorce. Given the criminal activities involved, it might also be wise to involve the police sooner rather than later, she advised. I left the meeting feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. At least I had a plan, but the next steps were daunting. I decided to start by securing all the evidence and making copies, just in case things got even more chaotic. That evening, I tried to talk to Tyler again, wanting to reassure him that everything would be okay. He seemed more withdrawn than before, clearly sensing the tension at home. "Dad, are you going to be okay?" he asked quietly. I hugged him tightly, trying to mask my own fears. "We're going to get through this, buddy. I promise." Just when I thought I had a moment of calm, the unexpected happened. Emily stormed into the living room, her face flushed with anger. "Jason, what the hell is going on? Who did you talk to today?" I took a deep breath, knowing this confrontation was inevitable. "Emily, we need to talk about everything. The affair, the financial stuff, what's really happening?" She scoffed, crossing her arms defiantly. "You think you can just confront me like that and expect everything to make sense? You've been digging up things that have nothing to do with us. Maybe you're the one who's been cheating on me with your friends." Her words hit like a ton of bricks. The audacity of her accusations amidst her own lies was infuriating. "Emily, stop deflecting. I know about Mike, the hidden accounts, and now this real estate scam. How could you do all this to our family?" Her eyes narrowed, and her voice turned even more bitchy. "Oh, so now you're the expert? Maybe if you paid more attention, we wouldn't be in this situation. Maybe if you actually supported me instead of nagging and controlling every little thing." Before I could respond, our doorbell rang. It was Karen, our neighbor, looking distressed. "Jason, Emily, can I come in for a minute? I have something important to tell you both." Emily glared at me but stepped aside to let Karen in. Once we were all settled in the living room, Karen took a deep breath. "I've been watching Emily and Mike closely since you started digging. I saw them meeting with some guys in black suits a few times last month. They weren't just your average bar meetups, these were business meetings, and not the kind you'd find at a regular conference." Emily tried to interject, but Karen held up a hand. "And there's more. Last week, I saw Emily handing over envelopes, thick ones, to Mike at the same hotel where you saw them. I think they're laundering money or something even worse." The room fell silent. Emily's face turned pale, and she opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The reality of the situation was sinking in. Not only was she cheating, but she was also involved in criminal activities that could ruin us all. Just then, my phone buzzed with another text from that mysterious number: "Meet me at the warehouse on 5th Street tonight. I have proof you need." I felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with fear. Who was this person, and what did they want? Was this their way of trying to cover their tracks, or were they genuinely trying to help? After discussing with Lisa the next day, we decided it was too risky to meet this unknown person alone. Instead, we coordinated with her colleagues in law enforcement to monitor the situation and ensure our safety. That evening, as I sat in the living room with Emily and Tyler, trying to piece everything together, the doorbell rang again. This time, it was the police. Lisa had informed them about the suspicious activities, and they were here to take statements and secure the house. Jason, Emily, Officer Daniels began, his tone professional yet compassionate. We need to ask you both some questions regarding the real estate investments and the recent activities we've uncovered. Emily's facade crumbled completely. She started crying, admitting that things had gotten out of hand and that she was scared of what might happen next. I never meant for any of this to affect our family. I was just trying to find a way out when things went south. As the officers took our statements, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of relief. The truth was finally out, and now the fallout was inevitable. Later that night, as I lay in bed with Tyler beside me, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything that had happened. Our family was on the brink of falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. But one thing was clear, I couldn't ignore the truth any longer, no matter how painful it was. The next morning promised more revelations and tough decisions. I knew I had to protect my son and figure out the best way to move forward from the wreckage that Emily had left behind. After the police took our statements, I was left in a whirlwind of emotions. Emily was visibly distraught, trying to explain that she never meant for things to spiral out of control. Tyler was quiet, sensing the tension but not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. I knew I had to stay strong, not just for myself but for my son. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of calls and messages. Ryan, my tech-savvy friend, was trying to reach me urgently. He had dug deeper into the real estate investment company Emily had been siphoning money to and discovered something alarming. The company was a front for a money laundering operation connected to some pretty dangerous people. Feeling the weight of this new information, I called Lisa again. "Lisa, you need to hear this," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Ryan found out that the real estate company is linked to a larger money laundering scheme. It's not just Emily and Mike, we could be dealing with some serious criminals here." Lisa listened intently before responding. "Jason, this changes everything. We need to escalate this to higher authorities immediately. This isn't just a family issue anymore, it's a criminal investigation that could put all of us in danger." Before I could respond, another unexpected event occurred. Mike showed up at our doorstep, looking more desperate than ever. "Jason, we need to talk," he said, his voice shaking. "I didn't sign up for this. Emily was in too deep, and now they're after us. Please, you have to help us." I was torn. On one hand, Mike was part of the betrayal, but on the other, he seemed genuinely scared. I decided to bring him in to talk to Lisa, hoping that maybe there was a way to navigate this without things getting worse. At Lisa's office that afternoon, Mike confessed that Emily had approached him with the idea of using the real estate company to launder money. He was hesitant from the start but got pulled deeper into the scheme as Emily pressured him. Now, with the authorities closing in, he didn't know what to do. Lisa took Mike's statement seriously and assured him that cooperating could help mitigate his involvement. "We need to gather all the evidence you have," she said firmly. "This could help us take down the entire operation." As we left Lisa's office, I felt a strange sense of relief. With Mike's cooperation, we might have a chance to dismantle the criminal network Emily had entangled us in. But the danger was far from over. That evening, I decided to confront Emily one last time. I needed to hear her side of the story, to understand how our life had turned into this nightmare. When I walked into the living room, Emily was on the phone, her face pale and drawn. "Emily, we need to talk," I said softly, trying to keep my emotions in check. She hung up and looked at me with a mixture of fear and resignation. Jason, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was desperate, and I made terrible choices. Before I could respond, Tyler came running into the room, tears streaming down his face. Dad, I'm scared. I don't understand why Mom is so upset. Seeing my son like that broke something inside me. I knelt down and hugged him tightly. It's going to be okay, buddy. We're going to get through this together. Just then, Karen knocked on the door again, looking more serious. Jason, I have something else to tell you, she said, stepping inside. I saw Emily and Mike meeting with a guy who didn't look like he was from around here. He was driving a black SUV, and they seemed really nervous. This was a crucial piece of the puzzle. It indicated that Emily and Mike were involved with more than just the real estate scheme. They were likely connected to a larger criminal network. I realized the gravity of our situation had just deepened. As I processed this information, my phone buzzed with another mysterious text: "Final meeting tonight. Come alone if you want the truth." It was from the same unknown number as before, urging me to meet at a warehouse on 5th Street. I debated whether to go. Part of me wanted answers, but another part feared it could lead to more danger. After discussing with Lisa and considering Mike's cooperation, I decided to go, but only with backup from the authorities. That night, accompanied by Officer Daniels and a couple of other officers, I arrived at the warehouse. The place was dark and deserted, with an eerie silence that sent shivers down my spine. As we entered, the unknown person from the texts was already there, waiting. Jason, thank you for coming, the person began, revealing themselves to be Alex, an undercover agent investigating the money laundering ring. I've been following Emily and Mike for months. They've been pivotal in moving large sums of illicit money through legitimate channels. Alex continued, providing detailed information about the network, the key players, and the extent of the operation. It was overwhelming, but having this clarity was crucial. With your cooperation and Mike's testimony, we can bring down this entire operation, Alex assured us. As the meeting concluded, I felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. This was the turning point. Finally, we had a path forward to not only expose Emily's infidelity but also dismantle the criminal network she had become a part of. Back at home, Emily was waiting for us, looking defeated. Jason, I want to help. I don't want this to destroy our family any more than it already has. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decisions ahead. Emily, we need to fix this, for Tyler and for ourselves. But it's going to take everything we have to move forward. As I sat down with my wife and son that night, discussing the next steps and the support we'd need, I realized that our lives had been irrevocably changed. The unexpected alliances with law enforcement and Mike's cooperation gave us a fighting chance, but the road ahead was still uncertain and fraught with challenges. I'm not sure how everything will turn out, but one thing is clear: we're in this together, and we have to face the consequences of Emily's actions head-on. The legal battles are just beginning, and I'm bracing myself for whatever comes next. After meeting with Alex, the undercover agent, and getting Mike to cooperate, Lisa and I knew we had to prepare for the legal battles ahead. The real estate money laundering scheme Emily and Mike were involved in was massive, and dismantling it meant we were up against some serious criminals. The pressure was mounting, and the fear of what might happen next was almost unbearable. The day of the first court hearing arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. Tyler was at school, but I couldn't shake the anxiety gnawing at me. I arrived at the courthouse early, trying to steady my breathing as I walked through the imposing doors. Inside, Lisa was already there, going over the paperwork one last time. She gave me a reassuring nod, which helped a bit, but the tension was thick in the air. We were there to testify against Emily and Mike, and the weight of that responsibility was immense. As we took our seats in the courtroom, Emily walked in, looking more defeated than ever. Her eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I could see a mix of fear and resignation there. She sat down beside her lawyer, who seemed equally stressed. The prosecution began with Lisa presenting the evidence we had gathered: emails, financial statements, photos, and Mike's testimony. It was a comprehensive case, but I could tell the defense was already preparing their strategy. Then came the unexpected twist. Sarah, the woman who had initially approached me with the information about Emily's involvement in the real estate scheme, was called to the stand. Her testimony was crucial, detailing how Emily and Mike manipulated the investment company to launder money for more dangerous elements. But just when we thought things couldn't get any more complicated, another surprise hit the courtroom. Mike took the stand, looking visibly shaken. He started off by expressing regret and explaining how he got sucked into Emily's scheme, but then he dropped a bombshell: Emily wasn't working alone. There was someone higher up in the organization, someone who had been pulling the strings all along. The room went silent. Everyone was stunned. Emily's lawyer tried to object, claiming Mike was out of line and trying to defame her character, but the judge allowed the testimony to proceed. Mike detailed how Emily had been the front woman, but the real mastermind was David Thompson, a name none of us had expected. David Thompson was a well-known figure in the real estate world, someone who had built his reputation on trust and legitimacy. The revelation that he was involved in money laundering was shocking and added a new layer of complexity to the case. As Mike continued, he revealed that David had promised Emily substantial rewards for her participation, including significant financial incentives and protection from legal repercussions. This made Emily's actions not just a betrayal in our marriage but also part of a larger criminal operation. Emily's lawyer tried to downplay Mike's testimony, but the evidence was overwhelming. David Thompson's name had never surfaced before, and now everyone in the courtroom was scrambling to understand the full scope of his involvement. Watching Emily sit there, listening to Mike's revelations, broke something inside me. The woman I thought I knew so well was now exposed as someone capable of such manipulation and deceit. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the depths of her betrayal on both personal and legal levels. During a recess, I found a quiet corner with Lisa to process everything. She reassured me that we were on the right path and that Mike's testimony was pivotal. But the emotional toll was immense. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a profound sense of loss. How did our life come to this? As the trial progressed, more hidden truths came to light. It turned out that Emily had been embezzling funds not just for personal gain but to fuel David's larger money laundering network. The extent of the fraud was staggering, with millions of dollars funneled through various shell companies. Tyler's name also surfaced in the financial documents. Emily had been setting up college funds and other expenses without my knowledge, which made me wonder if she had other hidden motives beyond the affair and embezzlement. The courtroom drama reached its peak when the judge called for a brief recess to evaluate the new information. As we stepped outside, I could feel the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me. This wasn't just a personal battle anymore, it was a fight against a powerful criminal network that threatened our entire lives. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged: Karen, our neighbor who had initially helped me uncover Emily's activities. She stepped forward to offer her support, sharing additional information about the shady characters she had seen Emily and Mike interacting with over the months. Her testimony added credibility to our case and provided crucial insights into the operations of David Thompson's network. With Karen's support and Mike's cooperation, the prosecution gained significant ground. The evidence was stacked against Emily and David, making it clear that their actions had far-reaching consequences beyond just our family. As the first day of court concluded, I felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. The truth was finally out, but the battle was far from over. We had taken the first major step in dismantling the criminal network, but the legal proceedings ahead were daunting. Walking back home that evening, I couldn't help but reflect on how drastically my life had changed in such a short time. The man who once thought he had a perfect marriage was now fighting a legal war against his own wife and a dangerous criminal organization. That night, I sat down with Tyler, trying to explain everything in a way he could understand without overwhelming him. He looked up at me with those innocent eyes, full of confusion and fear. "Dad, what's happening? Why is Mom in trouble?" I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of our situation. "We're going through a tough time, buddy. But no matter what, we're going to get through this together." As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The courtroom drama was unfolding, and with each new revelation, the stakes were getting higher. Emily's actions had not only shattered our marriage but had also dragged our entire family into a web of deceit and danger. I knew that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but I also felt a sense of determination. I wasn't going to let Emily's betrayal define our lives. With the support of friends like Lisa and Karen, and the cooperation of someone like Mike, there was a chance to rebuild and find some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. The courtroom was packed, the tension palpable. This was it, the climax of everything that had been building up. Lisa, my steadfast friend and lawyer, sat beside me, flipping through our meticulously gathered evidence one last time. Tyler was staying with his aunt for the duration of the trial, and I couldn't help but worry about how all of this was affecting him. Emily walked in, looking more defeated than ever. Her eyes met mine, and for a brief moment, there was a flicker of the woman I once knew. But it was quickly replaced by the hardened look of someone who had crossed too many lines. Lisa stood up to deliver the prosecution's closing arguments. She laid out the case with precision, highlighting the undeniable evidence of Emily's infidelity, the emotional and financial betrayal, and her involvement in the money laundering scheme orchestrated by David Thompson. She didn't hold back, painting a clear picture of Emily's deceit and the impact it had on our family. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Lisa concluded, her voice steady and commanding, "this case is about more than just infidelity. It's about trust, responsibility, and the lengths one person will go to for personal gain. Emily Thompson betrayed not only her marriage but also the integrity of our community through her involvement in criminal activities." Emily's lawyer tried to counter, questioning the credibility of Mike's testimony and suggesting that the evidence might have been misconstrued. He attempted to portray Emily as a victim of circumstance, someone who got caught up in a situation she couldn't fully control. But the prosecution had already built a rock-solid case. With Sarah and Karen's testimonies corroborating the extent of Emily's deceit, and Mike's cooperation providing insider insight into the criminal network, there was little room for doubt. After days of testimony, evidence presentation, and emotional appeals, the jury finally reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson stood to read the decision. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Emily Thompson, guilty of fraud, money laundering, and marital infidelity." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was tinged with sadness and a sense of finality. Emily was taken into custody, and the courtroom began to empty, the weight of the verdict sinking in.